She flipped her hair as though dismissing me was a formality and remarked, "We don't need old men like you dragging us down." I am Ethan Cole, a 55-year-old operations manager who has spent the last 18 years at Westridge Engineering in Indianapolis, Indiana. I am not the type of man who commanded attention in meetings or gave speeches, but rather the steady hand that kept the wheels turning at a company that supplied industrial equipment to half of the factories in the Midwest. No arguments, no threats, no drama, just a methodical clearing out of my desk while the younger staff looked away. Some of them had been hired as teenagers, now men and women with families, and I'd trained them all. I simply nodded once, smiled sarcastically, and left Vanessa's office. However, while I put nearly 20 years of my life into a cardboard box, no one said. With just hard work and a reputation for dependable equipment, Lucas Westridge, who founded the company 43 years ago with just a single lathe in his workshop, grew it into a $30 million enterprise. When his health began to deteriorate, he personally chose me to oversee operations. "You're the only one I trust not to cut corners," he'd stated. The company needed modernization and new ideas, according to his daughter Vanessa, a 28-year-old business degree holder who had lived in Miami for 2 years. She had code for firing anyone who remembered how things were done before spreadsheets took the place of common sense. I felt a strange sense of calm as I carried that pitiful box of personal belongings to my truck. This was because, although Vanessa was unaware of it and hadn't even bothered to check, my employment contract contained a very specific clause that Lucas himself had insisted on in order to prevent me from being stolen by rivals, a severance penalty equal to 2 full years' salary in the event that I was fired without cause. I put the box in the passenger seat and sat for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel, looking out the windshield at the production floor, people I had hired, systems I had put in place, and equipment I had kept myself, all about to discover what happens when institutional knowledge leaves the building. I turned the key, put the truck in drive, and went home to phone Harold Preston, a legal acquaintance who had been waiting for a reason to take on a corporate case this simple. I didn't slam the door or scream out of the parking lot. I had never been the showy type. I had been married to my wife, Emma, for 29 years before she passed away from cancer 4 years ago. I had raised 2 children, both of whom were doing well, a daughter who taught 3rd grade in Cleveland and a son who worked for an engineering firm in Denver. My life had been based on consistency and dependability, which is the same philosophy I had brought to Westridge Engineering. In many respects, Lucas Westridge was the father figure I never truly had. My own father had vanished when I was 11 years old, leaving my mother to raise 3 boys on a secretary's salary. At 41, having recently been laid off from a failing car plant and possessing only practical experience and a mechanical engineering degree from a community college, Lucas had taken a chance on me. During my interview, Lucas had stated, "Credentials don't build machines. Men with sense and skill do." Within 2 years, he had promoted me to operations manager. Lucas and I weren't the kind to go fishing or go out to bars after work, but we had a respect for one another that went beyond work. When Emma became ill, he was the one to change my schedule without my consent so that I could take her to all of her appointments. First, Ethan, family. Always. About a year ago, the first red flag appeared when Vanessa began to appear at meetings as a recent business school graduate, with a leather portfolio and a cloud of pricey perfume, discussing market disruption and synergy. I occasionally caught Lucas flinching at her recommendations, which would have destroyed our quality control or outsourced parts that we had always manufactured in-house. However, he never publicly contradicted her. Instead, he discreetly made amends thereafter. "She needs to learn, Ethan," he said to me one day as he leaned against the doorframe of my office. "Some lessons can't come from books." Lucas handed me the updated organization chart with Vanessa's name at the top, looking defeated. The second warning came when he announced his retirement 3 months ago, saying he had heart difficulties, but I believed it was more about giving in to Vanessa's pressure. He hadn't looked directly at me when he stated, "I made her promise to keep the core team intact, the experience you all bring is what makes this place work." Lucas wouldn't look me in the eye, as if he knew what was about to happen but couldn't bring himself to say it. I just nodded, but something in my stomach constricted. When my phone called the morning after I was fired, I was sitting at my kitchen table going over my employment contract with Harold. Lucas's name appeared on the screen, and I nearly didn't answer. However, 18 years of respect don't disappear in an instant. "Ethan," he said in a strained tone, "what are you talking about?" I said, "Ask your daughter," in a neutral tone that was factual rather than angry. "Yes, I did." He hesitated, trying to think of something to say. "She said you were averse to the new course. Said that you were weakening her influence over the floor crew." I remained silent, allowing the quiet to grow between us. Lucas was aware that I had never betrayed anyone. "Are you not planning to file?" At last, he inquired. "Already have," I responded. "Harold Preston is handling it." Lucas let out a long sigh. I instructed her to review the contracts. There were safeguards in place, I informed her before I resigned. Another pause. She mentioned that she had cleaned the house yesterday. "Anyone over 50, including you, Thomas, and Jennifer." Jennifer oversaw the quality control lab like it was her personal kingdom, while Thomas had been our head of engineering for 12 years. Both were irreplaceable in their own right, and my mouth constricted. "Lucas, is that the path you desired? Getting rid of everyone who helped you build the place?" "You know it's not," he remarked in a weary tone, but I let her take charge. "She can now run it." On his end, I heard voices in the background, one of them very clearly Vanessa's, demanding and piercing. Lucas said, "I've got to go," without hesitation. The phone hung up. I put the phone down and looked at my contract, which was spread out on the table. Section 12, Paragraph 3 states that an employee is entitled to severance pay equal to 24 months' worth of current income if they are fired without providing the documented cause listed in Appendix C. Harold had put a yellow highlight on it. "It's airtight," he had previously stated to me. "They'll either pay, or we'll take them to court where we'll win, and they'll pay my fees, too." The maple tree Emma and I had planted when we first moved in 26 years ago now loomed over the land, and I strolled to the window that overlooked my backyard. We had taken care of it through 2 lightning hits and a sickness that almost killed it, patching it up, supporting it, and providing it with the things it needed to grow. Something changed inside of me. This was no longer simply about money, it was about value, about appreciating the contributions of experience, and about honoring the foundation that others laid before you made the decision to remodel the house. By lunchtime, I had spoken to every seasoned employee Vanessa had fired. Some were shell-shocked, some were angry, and all were concerned about their futures. I took up my phone and called Thomas, then Jennifer. I urged every one of them to take a deep breath and review their contracts. "Give Harold a call." The owner of Precision Parts across town, Douglas Clean, who had been attempting to hire me away from Westridge for years, was the next person I called. "Are you still curious about that discussion?" I questioned him. I was sitting across from Vanessa and the corporate lawyer for Westridge Engineering in a downtown office 3 days after I was dismissed. Harold Preston by my side, my contract in full view, his battered briefcase open. "This is silly," Vanessa remarked, ignoring the document, "and we're going in a different way." "That's sufficient cause." Harold, 67, nodded to the underlined section with the calm bearing of a guy who had witnessed every business ploy. "According to Appendix C, termination without cause necessitates severance pay equivalent to 24 months' income. About $320,000 in the instance of Mr. Rose." The corporate lawyer, Justin, a young man who appeared to have just graduated from law school, went over the document with increasing uneasiness. "Miss Westridge, causality is defined quite precisely in this context. Criminal activity, ethical transgressions, and performance problems." "He was resistant to change," Vanessa said, folding her arms. "That's insubordination." "Where is the paperwork?" "Performance improvement plans and written warnings," Harold inquired. "Because a documented pattern, not a single instance, is required under Appendix C." There was a tiny folder in front of Justin, but he found nothing. Vanessa's expression tensed. "All right. We therefore give him a few months' severance money and proceed. Harold clarified, 24 months, as stipulated. That's absurd, she yelled. We'll give you 6 months. Take it or leave it. I watched her without saying anything. She had the same obstinate expression on her face that made me think of her father at that same time. Her intransigence, however, seemed to be intended to tear things down, whereas Lucas's had always been used to construct something. Harold shut his briefcase and said, "We'll take legal action after that." The simultaneous layoff of several employees over 50 should make for an interesting discovery. Justin's eyes widened a little, and he bent over to mumble something urgent, but Vanessa dismissed him. "You should know we're ready to fight this before you make threats," Vanessa said to me, utterly ignoring Harold. "You'll spend years confined to court." "I have time," I said at last. "And we'll spread the word about your difficulty throughout the industry." She continued, "Good luck finding another position at your age." Her father came into the doorway at that moment. Lucas looked whiter and thinner, but his eyes were as piercing as ever. I hadn't seen him since his retirement party. He whispered, "Vanessa, a word. We're in the middle of something, Dad. Now. Not a request." They entered the conference room through the glass partition. They were bickering, and I could see Lucas making strong gestures as Vanessa's stance became more defensive. Vanessa refused to look at me when they got back. "Justin," Lucas responded, "prepare the severance agreement as written in the contract." "Dad," said Vanessa. "Not now." Lucas turned to face me and said, "Ethan, I'm sorry. I didn't want this to be the conclusion." There was nothing more for us to say, so I nodded once. Vanessa moved ahead of me as Harold and I got up to go. "This is not the end of it. Every vendor relationship will be examined by me. You can stop doing business with Westridge if you are hired by a company." Her remarks made Lucas pale, but he remained silent. I simply nodded once more as I reflected on my discussion with Douglas Klein the previous day. Regarding his offer of collaboration. Regarding the specialized market that Precision Parts was about to join but Westridge had been avoiding for years. I told her, "You're right about one thing, but it's not over." A week later, the severance payout appeared in my account. I had never seen so much money in one place, $320,000 minus taxes. I ought to have felt validated. Rather, I felt empty. The aim was not money. Really, neither was retaliation. There was more to it than that. Our former head of engineering, Thomas Baldwin, and I met at a diner midway between our houses that same day. At 3 in the afternoon, the place was almost deserted. We were in a rear booth with a couple of truckers at the counter. "It's not as good as your deal, but better than nothing," he remarked, swirling his coffee without drinking it. "Harold got me a year's severance. They want you to sign an NDA." He nodded. "Can't talk about proprietary processes or business practices for 5 years. I can't discuss my own work after 40 years in engineering," he said with a sour chuckle. "Are you signing it?" "I don't see many options. My granddaughter will be attending college in the upcoming year." I crossed the table and shoved a business card. "Clean Douglas. Precise components. He's seeking a consultant with knowledge of precision hydraulics," I said. "No NDA is necessary." Thomas gazed intently at the card. "Westridge would sue me if I took this." "Not if you're only offering advice on broad industry norms. That has nothing proprietary about it." Slowly, he put the card in his pocket. "Ethan, what's going on? You're not stirring the pot here." I still hadn't disclosed my agreement with Douglas to anyone. However, Thomas had a right to know. "We have collaborated for more than 10 years. I'm partnering with Precision," I muttered, adding that Douglas was bringing me in to lead a new division. Certain hydraulic parts. Vanessa believes that the high-margin, small-batch products are a waste of time. "The custom work," Thomas said, raising his eyebrows. Westridge's future was always that, according to Lucas, and Vanessa is destroying it to concentrate on mass production. Thinks she can compete with overseas manufacturers on price. Thomas stated bluntly, she can't, not with our labor costs. I understand. Lucas does, too. Is that why you're telling me this? Thomas leaned forward. Do you believe Lucas is somehow involved? No, I said, shaking my head. However, Jennifer and I had lunch yesterday. Vanessa has been liquidating equipment, she said. Lucas purchased specialist equipment for the unique work last year. Half of it has already been sold by her. Thomas replied, that's over $2 million in equipment, his eyes wide. At auction prices, probably got 30 cents on the dollar. Dawning understood, Thomas sat back and said, she's stripping the company. Turning resources into money. I gave a nod. And you know who has been purchasing real estate in Miami? Jesus. Thomas wiped his face and said, is Lucas aware? I don't believe so. He didn't build the business for liquidation, but for legacy. For a while, we both sat in quiet, trying to figure out what this meant. For the more than 100 workers who are still employed at Westridge, not just for us. For the work of Lucas's life. What are your plans? At last, Thomas inquired. I urged plainly, build something better, something that honors the past and the future. Alongside Douglas Clean. With a doubtful tone, Thomas said, Douglas is just an investor. He himself is 2 years away from retirement. Wants to support knowledgeable individuals and then move on. And let me guess, you need an engineer who understands hydraulics. For the first time in weeks, I grinned. If you want the job, you can have it. As soon as your NDA is restricted to information that is truly confidential rather than common knowledge. Thomas looked at me. You're not simply interested in business, are you? It's intimate. Building something that lasts is what it's all about, I said. I've just ever wanted to do it. I sat in Douglas Klein's office 2 months after I was fired, looking over the new facility's architectural drawings. Cornerstone Precision would be located in the repurposed warehouse on the east side of Indianapolis. Custom hydraulic components are the focus of our new business. Thomas had come up with the name. Build from the corners up, he'd said. That's how you make something that lasts. The supplier contracts were sprawled out on Douglas's desk, a barrel-chested man with a thick white beard and always rolled-up sleeves. Machine shops attested to this. They stated that the first 5 units may be delivered by the following month. Additionally, the CNC programmer begins work on Monday. Douglas looked at me slyly. Former Westridge worker. Said that you suggested us. Jason Wright, who had worked at Westridge for 6 years, nodded. Criminally underpaid, but brilliant at computer modeling. Vanessa had doubled her own pay and slashed the budget for his department by 30%. 2 weeks prior, he had resigned. What is the current number of those? Douglas inquired. I answered, 7, all top performers. Whistling softly, Douglas said, Westridge is losing talent fast. People follow good leadership, I responded. Vanessa's not providing it. It buzzed on my phone. Jennifer, who is still working in Westridge's lab but is providing me with information, texted me. She couldn't afford to go because she wouldn't be retiring for 3 years, but she could definitely keep an eye out. A picture of an internal memo was included in the communication. 3 significant clients are threatening to cancel contracts due to missed deadlines, production delays, and quality control problems. When I showed it to Douglas, he improved his vision by adjusting his reading glasses. Just as we predicted, he stated. The brain drain's affecting output already. Unsatisfied by the news, I put my phone in my pocket. Families I'd known for years worked for Westridge. Mortgage holders, college-bound children, and elderly parents. I didn't want to cause them pain. In reference to one of Westridge's largest clients, we should reach out to Midwest Manufacturing, I remarked. Let them know we'll be operational in 60 days. Douglas made a note and nodded, saying, "We've already set up a meeting for next week. Their buying manager is keen to speak." I got up and went to the window that looked down on the warehouse floor. The first pieces of equipment were being installed by workers. The foundation of something new. Something that respects both innovation and experience. My phone rang. The name of Lucas Westridge appears on the screen. I said to Douglas, "I should take this," and he nodded before leaving, shutting the door behind him. "Lucas," was my response. "Ethan," he said in a weary, dejected tone, "we need to talk." "I'm listening." A deep sigh. "I am aware of your actions. The new business. The Westridge staff members you're firing." I remained silent. It was just business, not unlawful or even unethical. Lucas went on, "I'm calling to ask for your help, not to ask you to stop." I was surprised by that. What sort of assistance? The kind that might save what's left of my company. He hesitated. "Vanessa has been liquidating her assets. Sacrificing quality in order to save money. The board is worried. I am, too." "Why tell me this?" "Because you alone are familiar with every aspect of the operation. The sole person who could perceive a way forward." One more pause. "And because I should have listened to you months ago when you warned me she wasn't ready." I shut my eyes. Reflected on the years spent working with Lucas. Constructing something of which we were both proud. Something where hundreds of individuals trusted us to make wise choices and were employed. "Lucas, what precisely are you requesting?" "This evening, stop by my house. 7. If Thomas is agreeable, bring him. The board wants to get together to talk about their alternatives." "Are there any options?" Lucas said, "Yes, with a little more vigor, including a change in leadership." Once more, I glanced at the warehouse floor. At our little but expanding business. I had been constructing the future from the ashes of treachery. Finally, I answered, "I'll be there, but I'm not promising anything." His voice showed relief as he said, "Fair enough." "And Ethan?" "Yes. Thank you for still taking my calls." I was standing in the rear of Westridge Engineering's main conference room 6 months after I had been dismissed. With Vanessa at the head of the table and her new executive team, the most of whom were under 35, looking anxious, the quarterly all-hands meeting had just been called to order. The board had agreed that Vanessa should submit her quarterly findings first, so I wasn't supposed to speak until the very end. Give her an opportunity to explain the lost contracts, the 37% decline in revenue, and the shortcomings in quality control. She caught me midway through a presentation in which she blamed legacy inefficiencies and market conditions. "Why is he in this place?" She pointed at me and demanded. Lucas, who was seated calmly among the board members, gave the chairman a nod as he stood up. "Vanessa," stated the chairman, "the board has reached a decision regarding the company's leadership." Her face turned pale. "You can't be serious, Ethan." The chairman turned to face me and went on. "Do you want to describe the new setup?" I moved ahead with a folder in my hand. It contained very different information from the one Harold had prepared for my severance 6 months prior. "Westridge Engineering is merging with Cornerstone Precision," I remarked with a firm tone. "The board has approved the acquisition agreement this morning." Vanessa gave a harsh laugh. "This is ridiculous. The majority shareholder is me." "No," responded Lucas, slowly getting to his feet, "you hold 20%. I voted in favor of the merger, maintaining my 51% share." I moved the folder to her on the other side of the table. "Westridge's custom hydraulics branch will be absorbed by Cornerstone. Under the new leadership, the remainder will continue." Thomas remarked, "My leadership," as he entered through the door. Vanessa's hands trembled as she turned through the papers. This is, I concluded for her, business," adding, "nothing personal." I was standing in the enlarged production building, which now housed Westridge Custom Hydraulics and Cornerstone Precision, a year after the merger. Employees moved between stations with efficiency, and the sound of the gear produced a symphony of productivity that I had missed during my months away. Leaning heavily on his cane, Lucas joined me on the viewing platform. His spirit had improved, but his health had not. The finest medicine had been seeing the business flourish once more. He handed me a report and stated, quarterly numbers came in. Best in 5 years. I looked at the figures and nodded. Profit margins are increasing. Retention of employees leveled off. A total of 3 new patents were submitted. Vanessa called yesterday, Lucas said, from Miami. I arched an eyebrow but remained silent. She had accepted her payout after the merger and vanished without saying goodbye or offering an apology. She's starting a consulting firm, he said. Asked if I'd invest. Will you? Lucas gave a headshake. She was instructed to return to Indianapolis first. Learn everything there is to know about the company. The manner in which I did. Like you did. And. She hung up. He gave a sorrowful smile. However, she gave me a call back this morning. Asked whether the deal was still valid. I observed Jason instructing 2 new programmers on our most recent system below us. Wearing a lab coat, Jennifer examines parts with her usual accuracy. Thomas is working at a desk, manually sketching a design change before entering it into a computer. Working side by side, experience and innovation strengthen one another rather than compete or replace one another. You know, Lucas replied, when I wrote that severance clause in your contract, I never imagined how it would turn out. I grinned. Neither did I. In pleasant solitude, we saw the expansion of the business that we had both contributed to. Certain lessons are pricey. However, the ones that endure, the ones that alter our perspective of the world, are always worth the cost.